Hello, you're watching PC Jack. This week, Sony's PS5 exclusive Returnal has finally arrived on PC. While I've been very excited to play this roguelike, and since the launch I've been having an absolute blast on my main system, I wanted to take the time to test this pretty intensive title running on integrated graphics. So to do so, I've installed the game on my Ryzen 5 5600G test system, which uses integrated Radeon graphics, and back when I reviewed this at launch was a somewhat high performing APU depending on the application. Now, I like to revisit the 5600G from time to time, so I thought Returnal would be an interesting challenge for this nearly 2-year-old CPU. Now, taking a look at the specs for Returnal, most specifically for what the developer recommends for a target resolution of 720p and 60 FPS with either a GTX 1060 or RX 580, given the performance of the 5600G more closely compares to something like the GTX 750 Ti or potentially the GT 1030. This should paint a bit of a picture for what to expect later in the video. Now, upon booting up the game, we can see that the game will pre-compile shaders before loading, which is great to see, and is really useful in helping to avoid stuttering in-game. Not that it isn't present at all, even on my high-end system though, but still helpful in minimizing stuttering altogether. Now, taking a look at our graphics settings, Returnal boasts many interesting graphics options, some of which our 5600G can't utilize, such as ray tracing. Not that I recommend ray tracing with this CPU anyway, but one feature that is extremely useful to us is going to be FSR, which will allow us to improve performance and render at a lower resolution, which is then upscaled to native. Now, my initial goal for this game was to aim for as high a frame rate as possible, which, despite switching all our graphics settings to low and opting for FSR performance, wasn't possible, and not only were we pretty far away from our goal, but the game looked absolutely awful too. This is a shame, as a game like this really needs that high FPS given the fast-paced nature of the game. But of course, there's a lot going on, and our integrated graphics on the 5600G will be pushed to the absolute limit when running this title. Most notably causing a large degradation running with these settings though, is using FSR performance, which pretty much ruins our visuals, more so than our graphics options being set to low. Running FSR at 720p at balanced up performance is going to cause a pretty significant loss of visual clarity, so for my testing, I decided to opt for FSR Ultra Quality. Testing between quality and ultra quality saw little performance or visual loss, so this seemed like the sweet spot to aim for without compromising too much. So with 60 FPS pretty inaccessible with our 5600G, I decided to lower our target frame rate to 30 FPS. Now, this isn't ideal given the type of game we're playing, but aiming for this frame rate does have some benefits. Most notably is going to be visuals, as aiming for this frame rate allowed me to run FSR Ultra Quality for a little boost of performance without compromising too much on visuals. And with the slight amount of performance headroom, this allowed me to increase our texture quality from low to medium, as well as our anti-aliasing quality to medium to improve those jagged edges, and also to allow us to have a more reasonable level of visual fidelity. So as you can see, this did allow us to play at around our target frame rate of 30 FPS, with the odd dips into the mid or low 20s. Now, your experience may vary and of course will be subjective, but this created a much more reasonable gameplay experience without sacrificing too much on visuals. Maybe using the Steam Deck has lowered my expectations for performance, but nonetheless, it's nice that we can create a somewhat playable experience in such a new and demanding title. However, there is one additional step we can take in order to create a smoother experience, and that would be locking our frame rate to our target, which in our case is 30 FPS. Now, there are a few ways of doing this, but starting with locking the frame rate using the in-game options. This improves our frame times and sticks closer to 33.3 milliseconds, but this does jump quite a bit still using this option as we head into more intensive scenarios, which this game has a lot of with its abundance of particle effects. However, what I found was a much better way of locking our frame rate and providing much smoother gameplay was instead using Reaver Tuner to lock our frame rate to 30 FPS. This gave me a much better experience compared to the in-game FPS lock and allowed the game to run more reasonably and maintain slightly better frame times. Now, before we close out the video, there is one last thing I want to draw attention to, and that is the game's built-in benchmarking tool. This benchmark is pretty useful and tests multiple effects over the course of its run, and actually breaks these down into specific zones. But I thought I'd run our 5600G through this as well as testing in-game. Now, given our goal of 30 FPS, we can see the benchmark gets pretty close to this with our final graphics settings. But of course, those 1% and 0.1% lows are still pretty noticeable. But we do have to bear in mind that the 5600G is getting pushed pretty hard by this title, so it's still to be expected. Now, as disappointing as it is that this game can't hit as high a frame rate as we would like, I still believe that 5600G users do still have the option to run this game and still get an enjoyable experience. Again, I have to reiterate that of course this will be subjective, but I still enjoy playing the game with our optimized settings nonetheless. Another interesting note though is that as of the time of filming, this was tested with the latest Radeon Adrenaline driver version 23.11.2, which is a few months old at this point, so fingers crossed performance could improve slightly with a new driver release, so I'd recommend keeping an eye out for that. Overall, I had a really interesting time testing Returnal on integrated graphics, and I'll definitely continue to use it for future testing, but most of all, I'm really pleased I can finally play this game on PC. Hopefully from today's video, it's provided you with some useful information, and better yet, if your system uses integrated graphics similar in performance to the 5600G, a better understanding of what to expect. But either way, let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, then please feel free to like and subscribe for more videos on the way soon. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at PCJack94. If you'd like to support the channel even further though, then please consider becoming a channel member for some exclusive perks and benefits while helping to fund everything I do on the channel for you guys. You'll find links to all those in the video description. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.